What's up? What's up? Mic check, mic check. Welcome to another late night episode of Bitches Love Sports, something that's becoming somewhat of a routine. But I'm your host, Jazz Monet. Nice to see you, whoever happens to be here. I can see people are coming in ready to watch. Thank you for showing up and joining me. Um, Feel free to join me by commenting in the chat. I like to talk. I like to discuss these topics, but more than anything, I like to interact with other people. So if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to just say hi in the chat. Feel free to comment on what we're talking about. Feel free to ask questions. If you're watching on Twitter, the best way to make sure that I see your comment or whatever you have to say is to come over to YouTube and participate in the live chat there, because that'll ensure that I can see what you're saying. I hope Clement is here, because Clement always talks to me. And since we're discussing Dak Prescott's legal situation, I hope Flowman is here again. He was really helpful last time. So we're not going to hop into that immediately. Now, when we hop into that kind of depends on if anybody has an opinion on what they want to hear first. Because basically, in the week since the last time I went live, it feels like it's been a few weeks. We've had March Madness, we've had WrestleMania, we've had a bunch of Cowboys rumors, so many I could hardly keep up. And we've had these legal updates with Dak Prescott, which surprisingly I haven't seen any other reports on. But no problem, that's why I'm here. So if y'all want to hear me talk about those rumors, just a warning, I don't have any show notes. So sometimes I'll address like rumors or other people's takes, and I'll pull up a video or I'll pull up an article and I'll be like, it says this, and I'll break it down line by line or point by point. I don't have that for any of the rumors because honestly, I put most of my work into making sure the information I had on Dak Prescott's situation was accurate. So when it comes to the rumors about Micah or CeeDee or some of the other rumors about Dak, I don't have any notes on it. I'm glad to discuss it, but I don't have any notes on it. So just beware of that. But if you want to hear me like address the rumors and get those out the way, and then we can dive into what's happening with Dak, let me know. If you're like, nah, I need to go to bed, like, let me know what happened with Dak first, and then you can address the rumors later with whoever else happens to be up. Let me know in the chat if you feel one way or the other. If you don't, I'm going to just freestyle as Unity has suggested. Thank you for joining me, Unity. Which means I'll probably discuss a couple of quick shout outs and call outs, dive into the Dak Prescott stuff because it is very much at the forefront of my mind, and then get into the rumors probably towards the end. Or maybe I'll do that ADHD thing that I do sometimes where I go back and forth because all these things are connected in my brain, even though they might not be connected to you. And I'll just do my best to keep you on track as we go along. Either way, we're going to start off with a couple of shout outs and call outs before I get into the main topics of the day. First one, I don't know whether to make it a shout out or a call out, honestly. But if you're not aware, apparently a lot of people are not. OJ Simpson died today. I don't feel a way about that. It was interesting when it happened because like when I saw the headline, I wasn't sure what to say or think. Now I have this friend who I've brought up on the show a few times. His name is Denzel. We've been friends for a really long time, and sometimes our inside jokes make their way onto the show. And one of the sayings that we share between us is that like niggas don't take shit seriously. And so like if he ever just texts me with no context, no mention of anything else, like I haven't heard from him since the day before, and the first thing I see is niggas don't take shit seriously, I know something happened that should be significant and impactful. However, people are making jokes about it. And so I sent him a message and I was like, damn, OJ died. And didn't hear from him for like an hour. And then all I got was niggas don't take shit seriously. And then he started sending me the links with memes and videos and people making jokes about the situation. And like I said, I don't feel a way about it. But what it made me think about is just how I felt in the past when other celebrities that meant a lot to me have passed away. And just the significance of the energy that we leave on this earth. The significance of the energy that we put out into the universe. Because I was thinking, I'm like, man, I would hate for me or anybody I love to be in a position to where when we pass away, people can't wait to get their memes off. They can't wait to get their jokes off, right? But I do know some people who, if I were to say, like, wouldn't you hate to be that person? They wouldn't care. They'd be like, well, I'm gone. Why do I care what people are saying? That would be their honest stance. But I guess for me, when I think about what I try to contribute to this world, the energy that I try to put out there, I try to live my life and make an impact in such a way to where once I am gone physically from this earth, the things that I stood for, the impact that I made, the energy that I put out into the universe makes a good impact and leaves behind a good impression on people, something that they would want to carry on and perpetuate as opposed to make jokes about and make memes about. So, for anyone who actually felt a way about OJ Simpson, for anyone who was like, yeah, that guy meant something to me, my condolences. For everybody else, and hold on. Okay, I can hear myself now. I'm not there. There we go. I'm moving again. Last time the audio was terrible and there was freezing. So if we can minimize it to just freezing today, I'll be happy. So that happened. Also, there was this report that came out earlier this month from the British Journal of Sports Medicine. So apparently, they've been conducting a 20-year study of NCAA athletes. And what they found is that among United States college athletes, suicide is now the second leading cause of death. So this is definitely a call out. This is some really unfortunate news. And I want to give you some accurate numbers just in case you're like, okay, second leading, how many people is that? So I pulled up the information that I could find on the report. The full report is not available publicly for free right now, but I did pull up what I could find. So according to the results, it says well, actually, let me rewind and tell you a little bit more about the study. This was the objective was to determine the incidence rate of suicide from 2002 to 2022 among athletes from the National Collegiate Athletic Association and assess for potential differences by sex, race, division, and sport. Said, now my voice is echoing. No. Hold on. How's that? Let me know if that's better. So yeah, they wanted to determine the incidence rate of suicide from 2002 to 2022 among athletes from the National Collegiate Athletic Association and assess for potential differences by sex, race, division, and sport. So they said from the NCAA athlete deaths over a 20-year period from 2002 to 2022 were identified. Poisson regression models were built to assess changes in incidence rates over time. Linear and quadratic fits between year-end suicide incidents for males and females were evaluated. So if you don't know what those are, don't worry about it. Just know they were very thorough in analyzing these numbers. So the results. It says of 1,102 total deaths, 128 of them, that's 11.6%, were deaths by suicide. 128 deaths by suicide were reported, with males accounting for 98 of them and females accounting for 30 of them. It said the overall incidence was 1 of 71, and that was 140 in 145 athlete years. I'm not sure exactly what that means. They were like really, when it came to the results, they basically took the entire study and put it down into a paragraph. So over the last decade, suicide was the second most common cause of death after accidents. The proportion of deaths by suicide doubled from the first 10 years to the second 10 years. So during the first 10 years, it was 7.6%. And during the second 10 years, it went up to 15.3%. They said the suicide incidence rate was I can talk, y'all, I promise. The suicide incident rate for males increased linearly, whereas a quadratic association was identified among female athletes. So basically, it increased more for males. The incident rate reaching its lowest point in females in 2010 to 2011. So according to the results that were shared by the people who did the study, they said male cross-country athletes had the highest suicide incident rate, and Division 1 and 2 athletes had a higher suicide incident rate than Division 3 athletes. And they said no significant difference in suicide incidence rates by sex, race, or sport were identified. So that was interesting because When CNN reported this, their interpretation of the findings were that the incidence rates among white males were a lot higher. So I would have loved to actually download the full report and dig into it and see why CNN said what they said, as opposed to what was reported by the people who actually did the study. But this study is $60, which is not expensive, but it's not in my budget for this show. So when I start putting memberships and stuff out there and asking for super chats, things like this are the reason why. Just putting that out there. But overall, the overarching point of the study and of the article that suicide is now the second leading cause of death among NCAA athletes is really alarming, especially considering the fact that it's increasing. This isn't a situation where it was high and now it's gone down to the second highest. This is a situation where it's increased over the past 10 years to where it's now the second leading cause of death after accidents. And so what this really tells us is that even though there's a lot more emphasis put on mental health and life-work balance and making sure that, student athletes understand their value outside of their sports, so on and so forth, apparently there are a lot of mental health issues that still need to be identified, studied, treated, and addressed. Because, we know accidents happen. We know that there's a risk associated with a lot of things. And sports, honestly, have become a lot safer over the years. But to say that in addition to accidents and the inherent risk of their sport, now we have to worry about student athletes also dealing with mental health issues that could cause them to unalive themselves. I feel like that's worth looking into. And another thing to think about is the fact that, there's been so much talk about NIL and things of that nature, making things better for athletes. And according to the numbers, it really is, especially when it comes to women athletes. And so the fact that we're seeing a higher incidence rate of this among white males who in general are seeing the least difference with NIL in terms of like coverage and recognition, and for it to be so high among cross-country athletes is really interesting. So there's a lot more to be looked into now that they understand that this is an issue. There's a lot more for them to dive into in terms of why this is happening and what can be done to prevent it. Naturally, as more information comes out, I'll share it with you guys. According to this article from CNN, they interviewed a couple of people associated with the study, so I'll read y'all a couple of the quotes. One of them says, "Athletes are competing during a time when levels of self-oriented perfectionism and socially prescribed perfectionism are at an all-time high. Even though athletes are more likely to spend time on non-screen activities than their non-athletic peers, the perceptions or messaging around their performance on social media often leads to worse feelings of well-being." So this is a quote from one of the authors of the study. And so naturally, that they probably included a lot more information about what they discovered over the past couple of decades in the full study. But one of the authors at least believes that social media is partially to blame for this high incidence of suicide rates among athletes. Another one of the quotes says, "The psychological impact of injuries, including fear of losing scholarships or opportunities for advancement, can further amplify feelings of hopelessness and despair." Now, because I didn't get to see the full study, I can't really let you know if they noted any correlation between injuries and suicide. But this is another author of the study who felt it was worth quoting in this article for CNN. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, definitely just go to Google and type in CNN NCAA suicide rate. The article will come up and you can read more of their quotes and more of what they had to say about it. But yeah, it's been a 20-year study already, and it looks like what they found in that study is going to compel them to look into it even more. So I definitely hope they find solutions for that, because that is really, really sad. All right. So with that being said, we're going to switch to another not as serious topic, but still very serious. And that is the situation involving Dak Prescott. Before I say the words, if you are sensitive to subjects related to sexual assault, this will be the time for you to mute me, go watch something else, come back, or watch the replay, or just skip this episode entirely, because the bulk of it is going to be dedicated to updating everybody on what's happening with this case. And one of the documents involved, I'm going to admit, I haven't read yet. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw where I was like, hey, I'll let y'all know the time after I get off work. So I got off work and I pulled up some of the documents. One of them is a petition that was originally filed by Victoria Shores, the accuser of Dak Prescott. I didn't read it in its entirety, but I do want to go over it with you guys, partially because in the last episode when I discussed this topic, Flowman made the comment that the demand letter to Dak Prescott seemed, quote, amateurish. Those were his words, and I'll just say I did not disagree. I'm trying my best to be impartial here, but like I said last time, I am a human being. I have very complex feelings associated with this, both because I'm a fan of Dak Prescott and also because I am a woman. So I'm trying to be as neutral and as fact-oriented as possible. But when he was like, this letter seems amateurish, I couldn't help but be like, you have a point, sir. So we got to look at the petition that was filed by Dak Prescott and his representation. I got a hold of the petition that was filed by Victoria Shores and her representation. And so I wanted to look at it because even though we know it was mentioned in the demand letter, let's just say there were some people who hit me up with questions about the contents of that letter, and I had similar questions. And so I do want to look at the petition. I'm assuming there's nothing too inflammatory in it because it is a legal document written by professionals. However, I haven't read it in its entirety. I've only skimmed it, so I don't know what wording, what verbiage, and what descriptions might be in there. So if you're sensitive to these topics, come back later, watch another episode. We're going to dive into what's happening with Dak Prescott and the updates. So for those of you who are still with us, and just a quick recap. During the month of March, it was reported that a woman accused Dak Prescott of sexual assault and that Dak Prescott was suing that woman for extortion. So in the last episode where we discussed this, so not the last episode I did, but the one before that, we took a look at the demand letter that was sent to Dak Prescott. We also took a look at the petition that was filed by Dak Prescott and his representation. We talked about both of those documents. We also talked about the situation where 105.3 The Fan interviewed the attorney of the woman, who also happens to be one of the people named in the extortion lawsuit filed by Dak Prescott, live on the air, and some of the errors that may or may not have been made during that conversation. So since then, there have been a few updates. Now, something to keep in mind. Some of the reports said that there were criminal charges filed against Dak Prescott. I haven't found any actual criminal records. What I found was reports that say that there were some criminal reports filed, but what I found was an actual civil suit that was filed by Victoria Shores. So let me simplify that a little bit. I had a friend recently who they filed a police report for something that person did, right? The police report was filed, but no charges were ever pressed. So that friend did not get arrested. Nothing ever became of it. They never had to go to court. To my knowledge, it's not even on their record or anything. So there is a difference between filing a report and actually having charges filed, right? So as far as I can tell, that may be what happened here, because the reports that I saw said that both parties, in other words, Dak Prescott and Victoria Shores, did file criminal reports. But in terms of actual documentation and cases, what I found was a civil suit from Victoria Shores. And then there's, of course, the lawsuit that we discussed from Dak Prescott from last time. So Victoria Shores, her case is being handled by Dallas County. Dak Prescott, his case is being handled by Collin County. So we've got two cases, two different counties. And so we've got two different things to look at in terms of progress. So bear with me here, because like I said, I pulled up these documents. Some of them I didn't name. I was in a rush, y'all. I wanted to get this information to y'all, but like some of them I downloaded and it's got like, so like right now I'm looking at Prescott v. Shores petition. Perfect. Others is like document 1, document 2. So I'm going to do a lot of clicking here just to make sure that I'm accurate in what I say. And to make sure that I'm telling you the right thing in the right order, because some of this has to do with timelines. So let's see here. All right, so we're going to start. Let's see, which county is this? Defendant. We're actually going to get to that one second. So I'm looking at the one right now where Dak Prescott is the plaintiff and Victoria Shores and her attorneys are defendants. I actually want to start with what's happening in Dallas County with the suit filed by Victoria Shores. And I might have to pull it up again. This happened last time where all the windows closed and I had to pull up everything again. Collin County, Dallas County. Here we go. Can y'all see that? No, it's not coming up. Let me try again. I might have to pull this into another window to share this on the screen with you guys. I don't know why it won't just... Like I said, last time we did this, there were a lot worse issues. So to have the screen just not share properly is actually way better than having the audio cut out every 5 seconds. Alrighty. So let's try it this way and open. And okay, I think we're halfway there. Share screen, fingers crossed it comes through this time. Cool. Okay, so this is the document that I said I had not read yet. I'd only skimmed it, but since we looked at the petition filed by Dak Prescott, I wanted to also look at the petition filed by Victoria Shores. I'm so glad so many of y'all are interested in this because like I'd be nerding out on this stuff and I'd be like, don't nobody want to hear about this. And then it's like y'all show up to listen and this is awesome. So this is the document that was filed on March 14th. So we've already discussed the fact that this document was filed, but not the contents of it. So in the demand letter, that's where Victoria Shores said that she suffered $100 million worth of damages due to a sexual assault that occurred in February of 2017. And so far from skimming through this, it looks like this petition reiterates some of those facts. So here where it says facts, once again, I'm going to read those out loud. If you're sensitive to these topics, please mute. But I'm going to read them out loud just to see if they're the same as what was mentioned in the demand letter. So they write, this lawsuit is necessary as a result of a sexual assault that plaintiff suffered on or about February 2nd, 2017. At that time, plaintiff and defendant met at the former's place of employment. Both parties, along with 2 members of defendant's entourage, entered a black SUV-style vehicle. Defendant directed plaintiff to the furthest back road to the strip club known as XTC Cabaret. Now, in the demand letter we read, that part was redacted. We didn't know where they went. So this is new information that they were going to a strip club. On the way to the strip club, defendant exposed his genitalia and plaintiff refused these advances. Defendant Prescott then proceeded to use physical force and forcibly penetrate the plaintiff. In the demand letter, and maybe I should pull that up as well, because in the demand letter, they talked about the fact that he asked a few people to leave. And then she was, I don't think I can pull both up on the screen at the same time. I'm going to try, but more than likely I'm going to have to switch back and forth. But in the demand letter, they mentioned that he asked people to, I'm going to close this. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Okay, we're still here. Cool. But in the demand letter, she specified, or whoever wrote the demand letter, I should say, specified that they were in the vehicle and he asked for people to leave. They also added the detail that there were female members of this entourage. So it was a few more details that were mentioned in the demand letter than what was mentioned here in this particular petition. I don't know why those details weren't included there, but we're going to keep reading and then I'll bring up the demand letter as well to kind of just juxtapose the two things. So, oh, actually, there's no more details. It looks like that's it. So that was it. They said that they were going on the way to the strip club. Defendant exposed his genitalia and plaintiff refused these advances. Defendant Prescott then proceeded to use physical force and forcibly penetrate the plaintiff. That is very weirdly written because it almost makes it sound like all this happened on the way, as though people were still in the vehicle and the vehicle was moving. Whereas in the demand letter, which I'm going to reshare with you guys now, The details said that they had stopped at the place and that they were okay, I think I have to stop sharing this to share the other one. In the demand letter, it said that they had stopped and people got out, and then all of this happened. So here's where it talks about that incident in the demand letter. So it says, you and Ms. Shores became acquainted through her employment and exchanged information. This is what Victoria's attorneys wrote in the demand letter to Dak Prescott. They continued. Communication ensued between you both via Snapchat, and you invited her to hang out. Thereafter, on or about February 2nd, 2017, you and Ms. Shores, along with 2 members of your entourage and a couple additional female friends, met at Redacted, which, according to the petition we just looked at, was XTC Cabaret in Plano. At some point, you, Miss Shores, along with 2 members of your entourage, entered your black SUV-style vehicle. You directed Miss Shores to the furthest back row so you could all head to Redacted, the strip club. On the ride to the strip club, you exposed your genitalia. Miss Shores did not want to engage in sexual intercourse and made sure to verbalize her wishes. Afterwards, the car came to a stop at your destination. Once this occurred, everyone got out of the car except you, and you further signaled to one of your entourage members to leave you and Miss Shores alone. At this point, you used physical force and sexually assaulted Miss Shores by penetrating her vagina against her consent. Okay, so I'm going to say after reading both of those things, and we're going to go back to the petition, I still have the same questions that I had after reading the demand letter in the first place. And those are questions I'm not going to say it out loud, but going by the personal messages that I received, a lot of y'all had the same questions, but we're just going to keep going. So after that, the petition goes on to mention defendant is liable for sexual assault due to him engaging in behavior that a reasonable person would interpret as unwanted physical contact and sexual in nature. It goes on with, more mentions of legal statutes, so on and so forth. Damages. They said, as a result of these acts or omissions, plaintiff sustained damages recognizable by law. By virtue of the actions and conduct of defendant as set forth above, plaintiff was seriously injured and is entitled to recover the following damages: past and future medical expenses, past and future pain, suffering, and mental anguish, all other relief at law or in equity to which plaintiff is entitled. So that's a little bit vague, but that's basically their way of saying, hey, the $100 million is justified and it's going to cover these 3 things, A, B, and C. By reason of the above, plaintiff is entitled to recover damages from defendant in an amount within the jurisdictional limits of this court, as well as pre and post judgment interest, yada, yada, yada. More legal statutes, so on and so forth. The rest of it is just stuff that's in most lawsuits, and boom. So if Flowman were here, because of, I hate to judge people by the length of the document, but there's really not a lot of detail there as far as why do you feel $100 million is the right number. So it really feels like they took the demand letter and they put it in petition form. And by petition form, what I mean is there are certain things that are supposed to be in a lawsuit. So for example, the initial disclosures, the section entitled prayer at the end, the mention of the statutes, all that is supposed to be in a lawsuit. It's expected to be included. But outside of adding those things, which take it from a 1.5-page document to a 6-page document, there's really not much more in terms of details. It's basically like they wrote a demand letter saying, hey, Dak, give us $100 million. And he was like, no. And then they were like, all right, hey, judge, tell Dak Prescott to give us $100 million. And they had to say it in a different way, essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off the screen. And then we'll talk about what's happened since then, because there have been developments. So as you know, since then, Dak Prescott filed the extortion suit. There was a little bit of talk about it. And then we got to where we are now. So there was an amended petition, which actually, let me see if that's any longer. Definitely haven't read that one. The amended petition is also 6 pages. I'm just going to look at it and see if there's anything that we didn't discuss in the last one. There's nothing that stands out in terms of the details of the incident, which is what most of you would probably want to hear about. There's nothing different in terms of the damages. So I really don't see anything that's different except, was this in here? No, they wanted a trial by jury. I'm not really sure what was amended, if I'm being honest, and I'd have to go like line by line, page by page to tell you guys. But as far as the part that's like significant to y'all, which is like what happened and who said what, there doesn't seem to be anything significant. So there was the original petition, then there was the amended petition, and then another document that I noticed here is a dismissal hearing notice. And so, here, let me pull this up. And actually, let me see. I was trying to see which one of these came first. So I'm going to pull them both up so I can tell you the dates on them. So we've got the dismissal hearing notice, which is dated for March 29th. And then we've got the notice of non-suit, which is dated for April 8th. So what this means is that on March 29th, this particular document was submitted that I'm about to pull up. Actually, I'm not going to pull it up. I'm just going to read it to you guys. So it says, the above case is set for dismissal for want of prosecution by submission on May 14th, 2024 at 3 p.m. in the 160th District Court of Dallas County, Texas. There's another paragraph, and then it goes on to say, if you have not perfected service on all parties prior to said dismissal date, you must appear by submission for the dismissal hearing. In other words, nothing happened with this case, and or there was a hearing that somebody missed. And because that particular hearing was missed, the judge said, hey, or in this case, it was a court coordinator, actually. They said, hey, we're actually going to dismiss this case. You need to either tell us something or show up by this date, or we're going to dismiss this case. So this was submitted on March 29th. And so according to this document, this case was going to be dismissed by May 14th anyway. But apparently on, what did I say, April 8th? I'll pull up this one and show you guys. We got a notice of non-suit without prejudice. So I'll show you guys this one so you can see it. So we got a notice of non-suit without prejudice. Not much here. One sentence. It says, to the Honorable Judge of said court, now comes Plaintiff Victoria Shores and moves to non-suit the above captioned cause number without prejudice. Plaintiff respectfully requests the court grant said Plaintiff respectfully requests the court grant said motion. So in other words, the suit was dropped. It doesn't say why. It does say without prejudice, which means technically she could pick this up again at a future date. But with it being that it's being dropped, and I didn't see any other documents being filed, like I didn't see anything submitted to the court that was on record in the database that I was looking in that suggested that Dak's representation had submitted something to cause this. But for whatever reason, the case that was brought by Victoria Shores in Dallas County has been dropped. So on that side, Dak Prescott is in the clear. I didn't see any records of criminal charges filed or anything of that nature. And let me check y'all's comments real quick. Mills said, sad she is going this slow for 100 M's. I was just stopping by them. Thanks for the great info. Good to see you, Mills. Thanks for stopping by. But yeah, so that case is dropped. She's not getting her $100 million. I'll keep an eye out in case she decides to like submit another lawsuit, maybe for a different amount, or maybe with different charges associated or different accusations associated. I'm not sure. But yeah, as far as this particular case, charges dropped. So then we move over to Collin County to see what's happening there and get updates for what's happening with Dak Prescott's case against her. So just to recap, she filed a civil suit saying, hey, I suffered damages because of sexual assault. Dak Prescott filed an extortion suit saying, hey, this woman is bringing false charges against me in order to get my money. So let me go ahead and bring up the timeline because There were several documents related to this particular case that I wasn't able to download, but I was able to see that they do exist. So I'm not going to bring them up on the screen, but I'm going to give you all the dates and what happened. So the last thing that we discussed was the original petition by Dak Prescott, which was filed on March 11th. And after that, there was in the petition, they said he requested a trial by jury. The official trial by jury request shows up as taking place on March 12th. Also on March 12th, there were citations issued to Victoria Shores and her attorneys. Then fast forward to April 5th, there was a motion to dismiss. And there was also a counterclaim submitted. And then same day, there was a second motion to dismiss as well as a counterclaim submitted. Both of these motions to dismiss and their counterclaims were filed and submitted by Victoria Shore's attorneys, whose names, like I said, I keep mispronouncing. They're spelled Zehaie, Zehaie, I think is what it is. But basically, the two attorneys who helped Victoria Shores submit the demand letter as well as the petition against Dak Prescott, they both filed motions to dismiss and submitted counterclaims. Now, once again, I can't see the documents here, but if I had to guess, the motions to dismiss probably have something to do with the idea that they are acting as attorneys, so they shouldn't be accused of extortion because they aren't if it does turn out that this was extortion, they aren't the ones committing extortion. They're just acting as attorneys. So the cases against them should be dismissed. However, there is no motion to dismiss or counterclaim for Victoria Shores. So whatever was brought up against her seems to still stand as of right now. Now, once again, I'm assuming that that's the reason for their motion to dismiss. I don't know for sure. Just when I thought about why they would submit a motion to dismiss for themselves and not for Victoria Shores, that was the only thing that I could think of that made sense. Now, what I will say is Dak's attorney, Levi McCathern, he's very good. He's a very smart man. If he mentions someone in a lawsuit, it's usually for good reason. So we'll see what becomes of this. There's no mention of whether or not these motions were granted. It just says that they were submitted, and that was less than a week ago, so we still got a little bit of time. But also, I do see where there was another trial by jury request on April 8th, and there's also a notice of hearing on April 9th. So it sounds like everything is moving forward. Once again, there's no motion to dismiss for Victoria Shores. It looks like there's a notice of hearing, and if things continue the way it looks like they're continuing based on this record of the documents and motions that have been filed, there's going to be a trial. So how does that impact us as Cowboys fans? We kind of discussed this last time, but we'll go over it again. So when it comes to how this might affect the team, as for right now, anyone who's been asked about this inside the building, anybody who's considered a decision maker for the Dallas Cowboys who's been asked about this has said, no, this situation is not impacting Dak Prescott's relationship with the Dallas Cowboys. However, when the petition was filed, the Dallas Cowboys were mentioned, and Dak Prescott's profession as a quarterback was mentioned. So let me go ahead and try to find those sections real quick. It was mentioned a few times, but yeah, okay. So under the causes of action section, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 causes of action. And in one of them, under business disparagement, it says defendants made false and malicious statements against Mr. Prescott and his business as a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. And then there's another section where it says, and this is also in business disparagement, where it says defendant statements approximately caused the general and special damages suffered by Mr. Prescott and his business as a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, which are in excess of the minimum jurisdictional limits of this court. So basically what they're saying here is, despite everyone saying, no, this hasn't affected Dak's contract, this hasn't affected Dak's relationship with the team, it hasn't affected his standing with the team, what they're saying in this particular petition is actually, yes, these accusations and these statements being brought against Dak actually have affected his business as a quarterback. So something that could possibly happen is if this goes to trial and it does turn out that this is true and it has affected his business in some way, which may or may not be significant, right? It may not be something that was significant enough for anyone to bring up in an interview so that when they were asked, they were like, we'll just say it's not really impacting it because we don't plan on doing anything different with this contract, but maybe there's some other way that it's impacting his business. I'm not sure. However, this document says that his business as a quarterback has been affected. And so if this goes to trial, at some point, somebody is going to have to present evidence or testify or say something that supports this claim. Otherwise, it wouldn't be factual. And if it weren't true, I don't know why they would put it in the petition. And as a matter of fact, at the end of the petition, it says everything in the petition is factual, which means Dak Prescott and his representation have some reason to believe his business as a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys has been affected by this entire situation. So that's essentially where we are with that. Those are the updates. When I said that I had updates on the legal situation for Dak Prescott, somebody messaged me and they were like, is it good news or bad news? The same way I'm not going to say whether or not I think Dak Prescott is guilty or innocent, I'm not going to tell you whether or not any of this is good or bad, because all of that depends on your perspective on the situation, what you expect to happen, what you think is going to happen, what you want to happen, and how you feel about it. But what I can tell you is that the civil suit filed by Ms. Shores in Dallas County, that particular suit there was a motion for, what did she call it? Hold on, let me go back to the document to make sure that I get the exact wording. A notice of non-suit without prejudice. So it says, the plaintiff moves to non-suit the above captioned cause without prejudice. In other words, she's dropping it. Once again, because it's without prejudice, she could pick it up again. So I'll probably try to keep my eye on things just to see if another suit pops up, maybe with a different amount and different accusations. But Dak's suit against her seems to be moving forward, and we don't know what's going to happen with the motions to dismiss for the attorneys. So any questions from the class? Donnell says, I can't imagine Dak's legal team really wants to go to trial unless they have sufficient proof of extortion. Oh, absolutely. I'm with you on that one. And I can't imagine that they want to go to trial at all. Like, first of all, going to trial is just like tedious and stressful. There would be a lot of information that would have to come out that nobody, I'm sure, would want to come out. Even if Dak is not guilty, just when things like this are investigated, there is so much personal information that people have to dive into. And like Dak Prescott has always presented himself as a very private person, right? I can only imagine that he really would like for this not to go to trial. But however, something he probably wants more than this to not go to trial is to not have these accusations stand against him and to not have people think that he's guilty of this. So if it has to go to trial for him to clear his name and for him to prove that he's being extorted, hey, it is what it is. Kelvin Hicks says, so basically Dak wins. Not necessarily. So on the Dallas County side, like I said, there was a motion for non-suit without prejudice. So let me see if I can look up the exact legal definition of non-suit without prejudice so I can tell y'all exactly what that means. So according to Google, and the first result that pops up from Stranger Law LLC says, a non-suit without prejudice marks the end of a plaintiff's case, meaning they can no longer refile the case. No, that's a non-suit with prejudice. So a non-suit with prejudice, to clarify, a non-suit with prejudice marks the end of a plaintiff's case, meaning they can no longer refile the case. On the other hand, a non-suit without prejudice ends the current case, but enables the plaintiff to refile in the future. So what she filed was a non-suit without prejudice. So that means right now it's done, but she can refile in the future. And so there are a lot of reasons that a person might do that I won't dive into because I don't want to speculate too much on a topic like this because people will take this and run with it. But what I will say is he doesn't necessarily win yet because the plaintiff can refile, and they might refile with a different amount. They might refile with different information. But that case that particular case is dropped for right now, and his case is going to trial. Now, as far as going to trial, is that a win for him? Um, Based on the history of Levi McCathern and what we've seen in terms of who he's represented and the kind of results that he's been able to get, as well as just what we've seen in terms of the information presented by Dak and his representation versus the information that's been presented by Victoria Shores and her representation, it does look like Dak has a stronger case. Like, just the sheer amount of information on Dak's side is greater. The detail is greater. There's just a lot there in terms of just on face value when it comes to convincingness. I don't think that's a word. It does look like they're more prepared to convince a group of people that they are correct. So in terms of just being prepared to take this to trial, it looks like, Dak and his representation are making a good decision. They do seem very prepared. Kelvin says that means she's dropping it till she can build a case. Possibly. And there were some people who said that was something that was necessary, especially with the mention of the fact that supposedly there were witnesses, right? In the petition, as well as in the demand letter, there's mention of other people who were in this entourage. So for all we know, those people could be being contacted, being questioned. We have no idea. And we'll see if the news outlets report that this, and this might be a reason why no news outlets have reported this, because I was like, okay, if the case is dropped, why is nobody talking about this? But then again, same thing happened with Deshaun Watson. There was one particular lawsuit filed against Deshaun Watson by 8 of the accusers, right? They filed it together. And in that particular lawsuit, they ended up dropping it. And a lot of them admitted that they kind of either outright lied or kind of embellished their story to try to get money. But that part of the story was never published or reported, So sometimes that happens. A lot of y'all are saying that it's a win for Dak. And if y'all want to look at it that way, send him all the positive vibes you wish to send. I will not stop you from doing that. I will just say that there's still a lot that needs to happen. And there's some information that may come out that might, put the Cowboys in a certain light, might paint Dak Prescott in a certain light. We don't know what's about to happen. Now, at the same time, Michael Irvin, right? When he had his situation with the Marriott in Arizona, he also requested a trial by jury. And it did seem like it was heading that way until at the very last second, the entire situation just kind of disappeared and it went away. So there's still time for this to go away. It just looks like there's no sign that it's going to. So we'll see. INC says, without prejudice is just leverage during negotiations, ? It easily flips once they reach a deal. It could. And Donnell Bailey says, if I was Dak, I would also sue Victoria's lawyer for coming on the radio and calling him a rapist multiple times. Granted, I was innocent. And that is something that could happen. That was something that I mentioned in the last episode, because there was a question of whether or not the radio station could be in trouble for defamation or for slander. And I was like, yeah, it definitely did seem like they could be guilty of negligence there. But yeah, if it turns out that he has enough proof to prove that he is innocent and that this is extortion, that is a point at which he could start going after people who use terms like that against him without any sort of disclaimer that these were alleged reports or accusations. He could technically go after those people for defamation, because at that point it would have been proven that these were lies. So yeah, there's a lot that could happen over the next, I don't know when the trial is going to happen, but as this situation unfolds, as the case evolves, there's a lot that could happen for Dak, for the Dallas Cowboys, for these attorneys, for Victoria Shores, and possibly even for 105.3 The Fan and the radio host who talked to that particular attorney / defendant. So yeah, that's that. Any other questions before I move on to some of the rumors that have come up recently? Going once, going twice. I say going once, going twice, but like as I discuss these last few things, if y'all have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I don't mind addressing it. Um, INC said this news was coupled with Dak approving a training tweet on X. Appearance goes a long way. I didn't see that training tweet. I'll go look for it though, because Dak almost never tweets, but I also haven't been on Twitter that much recently. Oh, we've got notifications. Oh, y'all are retweeting me. Y'all are so sweet. Dak isn't even coming up for me. I'm like, did he block me? No, he right there. That would be hilarious. I'm not seeing the tweet that you're referring to. Feel free to DM it to me or something. But yeah, one of the rumors that did come out about Dak Prescott that was interesting though was this rumor that started about the Dallas Cowboys might draft a quarterback in the second round. Now, this was a really interesting one to me because when I first heard it, I was like literally waking up from a nap and I heard it on Get Up and I was just like, Adam Schefter reports, because the thing about Adam Schefter is he reports so much like good content so often, things that we can pretty much count on as fact or that come from reputable sources, that when he says something, I think a lot of people automatically assume it must have come from a source. There must be something to substantiate it. So when I start hearing this, I start checking in with people and I'm like, where are these reports coming from that the Cowboys are looking for a quarterback? This is wild, you know? But then as I started to listen more carefully, I realized that this was basically Adam Schefter sharing his opinion. Kelvin said, I started laughing so hard. I didn't quite laugh, but I did kind of feel that it was ridiculous, surely because of the amount of needs that the Cowboys have right now. I'm like, even if the Cowboys did want another quarterback, first of all, Cowboys picking a quarterback in the second round. They didn't even get Dak in the second round. Like, come on. Like, what kind of move would that be? If they were gonna get a quarterback, it would end up being like I feel like a post draft free agent UDFA, something like that. It's like they already got Trey Lance, which I feel like they would either trade him or just be like, oh, he's developed enough to take over the role. I can't see them getting Trey Lance so recently and then being like, okay, we're also going to draft a quarterback in the second round, nonetheless. That was a part that was really weird. Also, like I said, just the number of needs that they're looking at. And even if you look at who they're bringing in for the 30 visits, we're talking O-linemen, defensive tackles, running backs. You can kind of tell where their focus is. But if you listen to Adam Schefter's statement, and I meant to record it, but I didn't. But if you listen to it, he essentially says that like this is his own speculation. This is him looking at the Dallas Cowboys, and I guess with there being draft fatigue and just not too many things to report on that they felt safe reporting on, at least he decided this was the take that he should put out there. Let me read your comments real quick. Kelvin says, because why would we do that when we have multiple holes in our team? Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Willie says, hey Jazz, I don't know if you watch Club Shay Shay, but Cam said that Jerry is holding Dak back. I know Romo got his contract with no Super Bowls or championship games. Dallas ain't drafting no QB. Facts. I did not see the episode of Club Shay Shay that addressed this idea that Jerry is holding Dak back, but I have heard a few people saying that. I have heard a few people saying that if Dak were with a different team, he'd be somewhere where they would put better weapons around him or build a better roster around him, and he'd be able to get further. I'm gonna be honest, I don't have the bandwidth to speculate on that. I probably could, but even just thinking about that, my brain is like, we're tired. We're addressing enough. So what I will say is this. When it comes to Adam Schefter, and actually before I even say that, I'm gonna actually couple this in with the rumor that came out about Micah Parsons. Once again, I don't have show notes or any clip saved or anything like that, so this is me freestyling again, just to address some of the rumors I know people have asked me about, and people who are watching this particular episode might want to know about. But these two rumors are similar in a way, and I'm gonna explain it in a second, right? So you've got Adam Schefter who you know what? I think the Cowboys might draft a quarterback in the second round. Nothing to substantiate this, just his thoughts. He's like, you know what? I'm just gonna look in my handy dandy crystal ball, and I'm gonna decide to put this out on one of the most popular shows on the worldwide leader in sports, and yeah, just offer my random ass take. Um, and then you've got this other report that people inside the building with the Dallas Cowboys are, I forget how it was worded, but like Micah's getting on their nerves. He's wearing thin, something like that. Um, and both of these are similar in the sense that they both kind of came from out of nowhere. And without any supporting evidence or facts, they don't really mean anything. I think that was the thing that disappointed me most with the reports about Micah, right? Because when it came to him, um, and I only watched the clip once, and I've seen what other people have said about it. I saw not only what like J Tuck and some other content creators said about it, but I've also seen that clip, or at least the contents of it, the topic of it, make its way onto Get Up and First Take and some other really notable nationally broadcast shows, right? And my thing about it was this. Not only was it the textbook definition of gossip, but it didn't offer any actual information, right? I know there's the now infamous tweet where Trayvon Diggs is like, who said it? But like, not only did we not hear who said it, we didn't hear what is supposedly bad about his behavior. We didn't hear whether or not this actually will impact his contract or contract negotiations. We didn't hear whether or not this will impact his standing with the team. It's just like, oh, Mike is getting on some people's nerves. Like, what is really the benefit or point in even reporting that? And so what it made me think of was like for a couple years, I had like these events that I would go to in Dallas related to my position as a trainer. There were like these conventions that take place. I'm gonna be honest, they're anime conventions, and if you watch my show, I've talked before about how we get clients from anime conventions and the panels that we host and things of that nature, right? So if you're not aware, there are some bomb ass anime conventions that happen between Austin and Dallas. And so I've gone to a couple events in Dallas, and sometimes when I was there, I would stop at the Star for various events, or sometimes to have lunch or drink with somebody who I know who works in the building or in the area, so on and so forth. So I've been to the Star a few times. There's this one particular security guard who I think still works there. I don't know. I haven't been in a little while. But he recognized me. So sometimes I'd be at the Star and we chat and say hi, and he'd tell me little stories. And one of the stories, and this is a story that I've shared on the show before, he told me about when he was working security post game one time and he had to escort Dak Prescott to his car. And he was telling me about how he had to escort Dak to his car because of the number of women and other fans, but mostly women, who would basically try to follow him to his car and stalk him and just try to get to him, and how they had to like keep these women away from Dak Prescott, right? So when I told this story, I just kind of told it as like a fun little anecdote, like, hey, guess what the security guard told me, yada, yada, yada. Also, I talk a lot about ethical fangirling, and I'm like, yo, stalking your favorite athlete's vehicle and following them after a game is the opposite of ethical fangirling. Don't do that. That's not being a fan. That's being crazy. Don't stalk people. It's against the rules. But anyway, taking that story, I could take that story and I could have come on here and I could have said, hey, reports from inside the building are that Dak Prescott is reaching heartthrob sex symbol status, right? And I could have made people think that the Dallas Cowboys were thinking about marketing Dak Prescott as a sex symbol, but really, it's just the security guard told me that these women are obsessed with Dak Prescott, right? I could have left the women out of it and said, yo, somebody within the building said that they are sick of doing security for Dak Prescott, and just provided no context for it, right? I could have just been like, yo, this one security guard told me that he had to escort Dak Prescott after a game, and the experience was so annoying, he never wants to do it again. And y'all would really be sitting here thinking like, man, like, Dak has really pissed this dude off. Like, what do you do? Dak must be a bad dude, because I left out a whole important detail. I could go the opposite way and leave out the part with the security. And I could be like, hey, I heard this story from in the building about like these women bum rushing Dak's car after a game. Like, there are a number of ways I could present that story based on what I want the headline to be, what facts I want y'all to have or not to have, and what reaction I'm eliciting, right? So I say that to say, when we hear a story like Micah Parsons is wearing thin with some people in the building, that could mean that there's a coach that doesn't like him. Um, it could also mean that there's somebody in the building who he walks by every day and never says good morning. And that person is like, you know what? Micah Parsons gets on my nerves. He walks by me every day and doesn't say good morning. He's got bad manners. I'm sick of his ass. Like, we really don't know. And that's why I felt like not only was it pointless to report something like that, but it was also kind of potentially harmful because of the way that it could be run with and has been run with. It's one of those things that, like, if you're not gonna share the details, then it's just really like, what's the point in saying it? So I'm saying this not to tell people how to do their job, but really more so for fans, so that as statements and headlines and clips like this come out, we can kind of respond to them a little bit more appropriately, because it's like, I heard it and I just kind of rolled my eyes like, this shit is dumb. But there are some people who felt the need to like really dive in and address it, because I think a lot of people heard that and assumed the worst, which was, oh, this is another example of the Dallas Cowboys organization trying to disparage someone around the time that it's time for them to get another contract. Could that be the case? In theory, maybe. Do we have evidence of that? No. Is it a little bit different than instances of that we've heard of in the past? Yeah, it is. Because with other players that we've heard that happen with, there was at least something specific, right? With Dez Bryant, we heard about specific instances of things that he did in the building during meetings that people had a problem with. People cited his numbers, even though they might have been like, I don't want to say they were inaccurate, but I'd say, like, people always say numbers don't lie. I always say numbers don't lie, but they can be manipulated. So you can manipulate numbers to say what you want them to say in a lot of situations, basically, depending on the numbers that you decide to focus on. So I'll say they manipulated the numbers that were released to the public and focused on and emphasized to make it seem like he was less productive and less valuable than he was before, right? We haven't heard anything like that so specific about Micah Parsons. It's just this one report of like, oh, he's wearing thin. So I just honestly wouldn't put a lot of stock in it. And for whatever reason, it's a lot of these stories coming out this offseason. And by a lot of these stories, I mean just a lot of negativity in general, a lot of gossip, a lot of unsubstantiated, unfounded rumors that seem to lean towards the negative. And I'm not going to speculate as to why, just because, one, we'd be here all night. Two, I don't want to pretend like I've investigated people's characters and their tendencies enough to properly speculate on that. I'd be no better than a lot of people if I did, but I will just say, as far as what's actually been stated, not that much has actually been stated. So really nothing to see there. Oh, and then there was the one about CeeDee. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have the details on that. Hold on. CeeDee Lamb. We're Googling this live. Y'all get to see my live reaction to the details of this, because like I heard about it, but I didn't really like dive into it. Let's see. CeeDee Lamb responds to contract holdout rumor. As rumors of a potential holdout swirl around CeeDee Lamb, the All-Pro wide receiver doesn't appear bothered. The All-Pro wide receiver doesn't appear bothered, concerned, or dismayed by his ongoing contract negotiations with the Dallas Cowboys. Quite the contrary, actually, as the reigning NFL receptions leader made clear in a brief conversation with TMZ Sports, who caught up with Lamb during some offseason travel. As far as how his 2024 has gone thus far, he said it's been fairly stress-free. Relaxing, chilling, working out, of course, said Lamb. Yada, yada, yada. So yeah, there's a whole article on DallasCowboys.com basically about the fact that there's nothing to worry about there. Now, would I put this in the same category as the rumors about Micah and the rumors about the Cowboys drafting a quarterback? I'm trying to think. Well, okay. I would say things like this happen all the time. So is it worth reporting that he decided to hold out or not show up for something? Yes, that actually is worth reporting. I would say the emphasis that was put on it and the light it was painted in was slightly skewed. Because this is something that happens all the time, way more often than it's reported. So I just didn't think that it was worth making such a big deal as though like it was a big problem. Um, and oh, we've got a comment from Clement. Let's see. Clement says these reports about Micah are to further cause more disruption in the Cowboys camp this offseason. As for CeeDee Lamb rumors of him leaving the Cowboys, he came out and says that he plans to play. Yes, I did hear about that particular tweet. But one other thing that I want to point out about all this is that there are other things that could be reported on, right? The same way that we've talked about, oh, somebody in the building is sick of Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb might not come back. I would actually say that the conversation that happened between Micah and CeeDee right after the season ended, I would say that there's more to report on in that conversation than any of the other rumors that have come out since then. So one of the most interesting things to me is that, okay, we'll talk about these rumors. We'll talk about all this speculation that for the most part is unfounded and did not come directly from the players. However, the players themselves had a very interesting and informative conversation about the Cowboys, about the culture of the team, about some of the things that they look forward to doing and seeing with the Cowboys in this coming season. And for some reason, nobody's talking about that. Like, even when the rumors about CeeDee holding out and not coming back came around, the first thing that I thought about was like, why would he do that when he just sat down for 45 minutes with Micah Parsons and talked about the fact that he wanted to be one of the main leaders on the team in 2024? Him and Micah sat there and laid out what they planned to do with the team and for the team and a lot of the differences that they wanted to see culturally. And I'm like, even if you feel like he might have changed his mind, why would we not at least call back to that when addressing this situation, right? So, like, the fact that nobody's talking about that, no one's bringing it up, is kind of weird to me. And so that, to me, also supports the idea that the people who are putting these reports out are trying to portray these two guys, especially, in a particular light. Because I feel like if you go back to that conversation, there's definitely room to talk about some of the growth and maturity that we may look forward to seeing. There's definitely room to talk about some of the positive things that they said during that conversation. But yet, amidst all these rumors and all this talk, that conversation never gets brought up. It never gets addressed. And that is just so weird to me. It's so weird to me to have like actual quotes, actual video, actual content from these guys. And we're going to talk about rumors and talk about speculation and all this negativity, but we're not going to bring up some of the good things that they said and some of the words that actually came from their own mouths. Do any of y'all think that's weird? I'm going to go look at y'all's comments in a second because I saw some of them start coming in a second ago, but I'm just like, I can't be the only person who think that's weird, right? So INC says Lamb and Micah had a great conversation. That was a great conversation. I've watched it several times since then. Like, there's so much to take from that conversation, including the fact that, like INC says, they took responsibility for their roles. Absolutely. Clement says, for the Cowboys for life, my opinion is that CeeDee Lamb could possibly hold out through training camp if Justin Jefferson becomes one of the highest paid receivers in the game. Right now, nothing to report as of now. Agreed. I think they're making too much of it right now. Unity says the CeeDee story blew up over the man not planning to show up for a voluntary workout. Yeah, and that's what I was referring to when I said like people skip those all the time. Emphasis on the word voluntary. How about that? But if you haven't seen it, I definitely, or if you didn't see it in its entirety, or even if you only saw it once, please go back and look at the conversation that Micah Parsons had with CeeDee Lamb on Micah's podcast. And I'm going to add this. Not only was it significant that what they said during the conversation, the fact that the conversation happened was significant because CeeDee Lamb, he doesn't seem to be a really big fan of the mics and cameras. He likes taking pictures, like he's into fashion, has talked about getting into modeling at some point, right? So he likes cameras in that sense. But when it comes to, hey, let me make headlines, let me put out all my business for all the world to know, let me answer questions I don't feel like answering. Let me talk about, the personal conversations I have with my teammates. He's not that guy. He's not like on social media all the time talking about what happens in the locker room or what he talks about with his teammates. even in a lot of his interviews, when it comes to media availability throughout the season, he keeps it short a lot of times. Sometimes he'll outright say, I know y'all are going to ask about such and such. No, I'm not going to tell you. Like, he's outright said this. So for him to sit down for 45 whole ass minutes and dive into his perception of the culture of the Cowboys, things that have happened in the locker room, the role he felt he played, the role he felt Micah played, and what they plan to do differently and what they want to see differently next season, to me, the fact that that conversation even happened showed me how serious he was about everything that he was saying. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, or if you only watch it once, go back and watch it again. Also, feel free to go back and watch the episodes that I did covering that particular conversation. I think they're pretty good, if I do say so myself. INC says, if Lamb or Micah didn't hold out at some time during their tenure with the Cowboys, it would be an anomaly. You're not wrong. And I think that's something else. I think there are a lot of teams where we see the star players end up having to hold out. And we've talked about the perception of owners, the perception of players by NFL owners and how that relationship has historically gone. So while in the media, a lot of the verbiage that is used and a lot of the ways that owners talk about players seems to have improved, we really don't know that when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to contracts, when it comes to some of the things that are said behind closed doors, we really don't know that things have gotten that much better in terms of how owners perceive players. And what I mean by that is that it was just in the late 80s when Tex Schramm referred to players as cattle. And they said, we're the ranchers, y'all are the cattle, and we can always get more cattle, And so that sounds like a long time ago, but Tex Schramm was the last president and GM of the Dallas Cowboys before Jerry Jones. So in terms of ownership, we're talking about one generation removed. Now, that's a pretty big change. Like, Jerry Jones did come in and make a lot of changes, but whatever was happening among among NFL ownership at the time made Tex Schramm feel comfortable making a statement like that to the head of the NFLPA at the time, right? And what I always say when it comes to statements like that is you can't just look at the statement and who said it. You also have to think about the fact that they're in an environment that makes them feel comfortable saying it, which means that at one point, not that long ago, the environment, the culture of NFL team ownership was one that made one of the most important people in one of the biggest or the most important front offices in the NFL comfortable saying to the NFLPA, y'all are cattle. So just something to think about there. Brian Broadprint said, Trayvon Diggs tried to get who possibly said that from 105.3, but they wouldn't tell him because it was bullcrap. There is a good chance that it was bullcrap or that it was nobody of significance. Like I said, the same security guard who told me that fun story about Dak Prescott could be the same security guard who's like, Micah Parsons never tells me good morning and I'm sick of his ass. And I'll be happy when he leaves and we get another star player who's a little bit nicer and has better manners. We don't know. So I wouldn't worry about it. I also really wouldn't put it on the Joneses. Like, we don't really know what role they played in that particular rumor coming out. I just really hate that the rumor made it so far. Like, I hate that it got to the point where I'm watching ESPN and Club Shay Shay and they're talking about that mess on there. But it's that time of year. There are fewer things to report on and people are grasping for literally anything to talk about. I remember last year, what made headlines last year? Was it last year when it was like Micah Parsons has a foot fetish or something like that? Like, it's just crazy the types of things that people will grasp onto this time of year just to perpetuate the 24-hour sports news cycle, which is like, the gift and curse of modern day sports, honestly. The 24-hour sports news cycle is what has enabled our favorite players to, get record contracts in terms of dollar amounts. But it also is what's causing them to have to endure so much bullshit in terms of rumors and untruths and people just speculating and putting it out there for reactions because, hey, we got to keep those numbers up. I'm going to give y'all an example of how the numbers can work sometimes, right? So when people first started getting monetization on Twitter, my following was even smaller than it is now. I still don't consider myself to have a big following, right? But I wanted to see what it would take to hit the numbers they say you have to hit in order to get monetization. And at the time, I had someone helping me with Twitter posts that would kind of feed me videos, topics, content, whatever, and I would write up stuff on them. Um, and I would write it up, post it, and try to get engagement. And so we were like, all right, we're gonna have to put out multiple posts a day in order to try to hit these numbers. And so at first, my engagement was going up because if you go from putting out 0 to 1 post per day to putting out 5 or 6 posts per day, naturally your daily engagement is going to go up. But then one day I posted something that had to do with Dak Prescott, and oh my God, the numbers were through the effing roof. It was ridiculous. It was like numbers I've never seen before then and numbers I haven't seen since. I was like, wow. So what happened after that was because of the algorithm, so many people had engaged with my page because of that post. For a little while, other things that I would post were still getting more engagement than normal. But I was like still trying to post about other things. Because if you follow me, you know that I post not only about the Cowboys, but I also talk about women's sports. I talk about tennis. I talk about basketball. I talk about all sorts of things, right? So it's like I made that post about Dak. Numbers shot up. Started posting about other things. Numbers went down, 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 down. Then we got to below the average that we were trying to hit to try to achieve monetization. So we're like, all right, we got to post about Dak again. And so it became this cycle of post about Dak, numbers would shoot up, post about other things, numbers would go down, 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 down. And it got to the point where we kind of created this habit of posting about Dak to get the numbers up. But I will never forget one day I DM'd this guy and we're looking at the numbers and I'm like, I am so tired of talking about Dak Prescott. Me. It got to the point where I, a confessed fangirl, got tired of talking about Dak Prescott because it honestly wasn't that much to fucking say. I was literally just saying it for the sake of getting the numbers up. And so I have since abandoned that method of creating content, obviously. But I say all that to say, when you are in an industry where maybe the stakes are a little bit higher in terms of the necessity of keeping your numbers up and getting ratings and getting clicks and getting eyes on you, Dak Prescott is a cheat code, unfortunately. The Cowboys in general are cheat code. And I do think Micah Parsons has also become a similar type of cheat code. When I was doing this experiment, the numbers weren't exactly the same for Micah as they are for Dak. And it might have changed since then. But Dak, especially, like, Dak was more of a cheat code than the Dallas Cowboys in general. But Dak, Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, all those buzzwords are cheat codes when it comes to let me get my numbers up real quick with minimal effort. So unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with, where people will be like, hey, whatever it is, whether it's your own opinion, whether it's speculation, whether it's a rumor or something you pulled out of your ass, just say it. And yeah, we as consumers, as fans, are just going to have to be a little bit more careful and show a little bit more discernment when it comes to what we share, what we buy into, and what we discuss. All right. On that note, that's pretty much all I had to cover. I had some opinions on March Madness and on WrestleMania, but I'm kind of tired. So unless y'all really want to hear about that stuff, I might share it another time because what I was going to say about WrestleMania was kind of like an editorial commentary kind of thing. But unless y'all want to really hear about that, I'll save it for later because I'm tired. I'm sure y'all are too. Clement says, to be truthful, Dak, CeeDee, Micah, and especially Dallas Cowboys are cheat codes daily. Yes, exactly. He followed up with, as fans of the Cowboys, we have to understand that this comes with the territory of being America's team. Oh, 100%. And as much evidence as there is for things shifting, right? I've done reports on how when it comes to social media, especially social media that's used by the youngest generation, so like TikTok and Instagram, the Dallas Cowboys are not as popular on those platforms, right? However, they are still, in terms of the size of the fan base, especially worldwide, and the amount of money that they bring in and the value of the franchises, the Cowboys are still light years ahead of some of the teams that are popular on TikTok and on Instagram and whatever else might be coming down the pipeline. So yeah, that's one of the things that comes with it. So there's rumors about everybody, but it's absolutely going to be worse with the Dallas Cowboys. So I hope y'all appreciate being kept informed about what's happening with Dak. I'm going to keep my eyes open, just like I found the updates for today. If anything else comes up, I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep digging for updates. I'm going to keep asking around and trying to get as much accurate information as possible. So stay on the lookout for that. I really appreciate y'all being respectful when it comes to that conversation, because there are so many ways that that conversation could turn accusatory and disrespectful and just toxic. And so I really appreciate y'all being reasonable in your commentary and being respectful in your questions. Even some of the private questions that I've gotten, like via DM, via email, I haven't seen anybody be outlandish or rude. And I appreciate y'all for being the type of audience and the type of, can I call y'all fans? Are y'all my fans? I appreciate y'all for being the type of audience and the type of listeners and fans that I can have these conversations with and not really worry that it's going to get out of hand. So thank y'all for being reliable and for being consistent and for being respectful. And yeah, hopefully y'all got something out of that. As always, if there's anything else y'all want to discuss next week, the next time I plan on going live, unless something significant happens before then, is Monday or Tuesday. So yeah, anything that y'all want to talk about before then, hit me up and I will try to have it ready for you guys. Clement says, yes, you can call us your fans. Yay. I have fans. Awesome. I appreciate you, Clement, a ton. I appreciate all of you. Clement, INC, Unity, some of the people who aren't here tonight, JV, Mills, even Eastside Herald, who shows up intermittently. Who else shows up? Haven't heard from Vach in a while, but, you know, Vachi has shown his support. A lot of the Cowboys content creators have been in and out. Aisha, Tuck, all those guys. Appreciate all of you, whether you're here tonight or not. Much love to everybody who's shown support. So, on that note, I'm going to get out of here, change clothes, go to bed. Until next time, I'm Jazz Monet, and I'm out. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me redo that. Until next time, this has been another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm Jazz Monet, and I'm out.